Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Sigma Lambda chapter. This is Ms. Bertha Garrett Frazier.
Good evening. I am a member of Clinton Miss Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated, and over there are my lovely sorors.
And over there are the distinguished men of Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. We wanted to allow the community to talk and to get to know the candidates who are here, who are running for a very, very important position. As many of you know, one of the men or women here are going to be replacing retiring Circuit Judge Tommy Green, who served this county very well for over, I know, at least 25 plus years. And so we definitely want to be informed. We want to be knowledgeable about who these candidates are, and so we just want to hear from them. I would be remiss if I didn't mention and thank the pastor of this church, Reverend Cordell Fields, for allowing us to gather here in your worship center. And so at this time, we'd like for you to come and pray, and we're going to turn the program over to Otha Kane, the moderator.
Let us pray. Father God, in the name of Jesus, we thank you. Thank you, God, for your love. Thank you for your joy, your peace. God, thank you for just being you. God, we come this evening, God, asking you to bless upon us and anoint this sanctuary and have your way in this place, God. God, as we prepare to get to know every candidate for the seat, Lord God, we ask, God, that you bless them. Bless their campaigns, God. Because, God, we know without Jesus, God, we know that Jesus died in a social injustice, Lord God. And, God, we need people in place, Lord God, that can stand up for us and do what they say they're going to do, God. And we ask, God, that you give us the right person. Have your way now. We bless your name and we thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. And every heart say amen, amen, and bless God.
So let me take this opportunity to say good evening to each and every one of you. I am particularly excited to be here tonight because I believe that this represents an opportunity for the citizens to become extremely informed. You know, I also subscribe to the notion that many people don't take judicial races as serious as they should take them, but these seats, these judicial seats, they have the opportunity to really affect lives, right? And particularly young black men. And so I'm grateful that you are here tonight. I'm grateful that you are here to engage yourselves and indulge in conversations with these particular candidates that are vying for, as Brother Mumford mentioned, the seat that is being vacated by retiring Judge Tommy Green. I did not receive bios of the candidates, so we want to give the candidates an opportunity to introduce themselves. There are some ground rules. After the introduction, we will share those ground rules with you. If you have questions, we encourage you to write your questions down, and we'll get those questions incorporated in the conversation tonight. But because I did not receive bios, we want to give each candidate an opportunity to introduce themselves, and they'll have 2 minutes to do. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves, and then we'll go over other house rules after our introductions. And we'll begin with Deborah Gibbs. We'll work our way from that end to this end. So we'll begin with Deborah.
Good evening. Thank you for this invitation to be here today, to the sponsors and those who are here from District 72. I am attorney Deborah Gibbs, and I have been elected twice to serve in the Mississippi House of Representatives for House District 72. You are now in my district, so I feel like I'm at home. I'm here to ask for your vote on November the 8th to serve you as the next Circuit Court Judge for Subdistrict 2. I am more than qualified to serve as circuit court judge. I have been engaged in this community for over 30 years. I have legislative, executive, and judicial experience. We need a judge on the bench that will not only use their discretion wisely, but one who understands the holistic process of the judicial system, one who can help move the court docket swiftly, be able to manage the court and its staff, and to be able to bring credibility and respect to the judicial system. As a state representative, I hear a lot of concerns. One being, how can the judicial, legislative, and executive branches help improve the judicial system? Hinds County is one who needs all of the help that it can get and access, and we should be able to vote and use that. I have an undergraduate degree in accounting. I have a master's in business administration. Needless to say, I have a doctorate of jurisprudence, and what I'm most proud of, I have an honorary degree of laws from Tougaloo College. I have been able to serve as on the faculty at Jackson State University as well as an administrator. I have been appointed to, I was able to work as a law clerk at the Mississippi Supreme Court. I was appointed by a gubernatorial appointment to the Mississippi Workers' Compensation Commission as a commissioner. I've worked at, I think I did mention Jackson State on faculty. I also have been able to practice a solo practice. I'm the wife of a former circuit court judge, Robert L. Gibbs. I'm the mother of Ari and Justice. They went to HBCUs. They graduated from Jackson Public Schools, and they too are licensed attorneys. I have experience, I'm dedicated, I have served this district for 6 years. So on November 8th, I ask for your support to vote for who you know, one with integrity and honesty, who've always been a voice for the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Wendy?
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Wendy Wilson White. I'm a candidate for Hinds County Circuit Court Judge in District 2. I'm here with my husband and 2 daughters. I'm a graduate. Jackson is home for me. This is where I was born and raised. I'm a graduate of Provine High School, Tougaloo College, Clark Atlanta University, where I received my MBA in finance, and Mississippi College's School of Law. I graduated from law school in 2001. What that means is I have more than 20 years of very relevant and practical work experience. For the last 8 years, I've been prosecuting crime, currently as an assistant district attorney here in Hinds County, and prior to that, I was the chief city prosecutor for the city of Jackson. Prior to becoming a criminal prosecutor, I practiced 13 years as a plaintiff's attorney, defense attorney, and a mental health attorney advocate. So I'm running for this position because over the course of the years of my practice, I have seen a lot, I've been a part of a lot, I've been at the table, I've been in the trenches. I know what it is that's plaguing Jackson and Hinds County. I'm running on the platform of redefining justice because I see the brokenness and I hear it. There are 3 R's as a part of my platform. Crime. Crime is at the forefront of everyone's mind. My focus will be bonds and making sure they are appropriate and that they speak to the public's safety. I also believe we need more accountability as it relates to holding people responsible. Yet another prong of redefining justice will be mental health. Mental health is dear to me. When I was a mental health advocate, I then realized how many people live with mental health issues. When I started prosecuting crime, I saw firsthand how mental health and the criminal justice system intersect. I want to partner with mental health professionals so that we can both timely and appropriately address the mental health that's driving this crime. Thirdly is education. Our children need to be educated. Our children are in a crisis. They need to know and understand what crime is, what it looks like, and under what facts and circumstances they will be held accountable for their actions. I also see a need for us to educate our community. When we call upon us to serve as jurors, we need you. When we don't get what we need from you, it stalls the process. Again, I'm Wendy Wilson White, 21 years of trial and courtroom experience. Jackson and Hinds County are dear to me. This is where I was born, raised, worship, work, live, and I raised my family here too. So I understand what the people are crying for. I have the experience, I have the wisdom, I have been there, and I want to continue to work hard for you. You need a judge who has seen all of these situations play out into the courtroom. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Trent?
Thank y'all. My name is Circuit Court Judge in this district, District 2. I'm running for judge because I want to be part of the leadership that always wants to see Hinds County put its best foot forward, and I'm prepared to do that. I've been a practicing attorney here in Hinds County for the last 26 years. I've practiced in big firms. Currently, I have a solo practice where my focus is criminal law, personal injury, and workers' compensation. I'm experienced, effective, concerned, and committed. I'm the only candidate in this race that's actually done this job before because I was appointed by the Mississippi Supreme Court to serve as special circuit court judge with the specific purpose of reducing the backlog of criminal cases in Hinds County. That was an appointment. Now I'm coming to the voters and asking the voters to elect me to do what I already know how to do, which is to act as a circuit court judge. I've been a prosecutor. Currently, I'm the public defender for the city of Lexington as well as the Hinds County Justice Court. Currently, I serve as Hinds County Special Master for Commitments, which means that when unstable people have an application filed, I decide whether they can be treated as an outpatient or if they need to be committed to Whitfield. I've served in the youth court as youth court referee, which is sitting as the judge in the absence of the judge. I've served as youth court prosecutor. I was actually the first Hinds County Youth Drug Court prosecutor. And I have served as parent representative for people with open CPS cases. So I have the judicial experience to do the job. I have the practical legal experience to do the job. I've tried 2 verdicts, over 60 cases, all over the state of Mississippi. So I know how a courtroom operates, and I know how to operate a courtroom. So I've spent an extensive amount of time in circuit courts, justice courts, municipal courts, and county courts all over the state of Mississippi. I pride myself on being a courtroom lawyer. But I live in Hinds County like you all do by choice. So I have the same concerns that you all have. I know what it feels like to walk out in my driveway and find out that my truck is just not where I parked it last. I know what it feels like to be trying to go to sleep and still be able to hear gunshots outside. So I have the same concerns that you have. I've done my due diligence. I have put in the work, and now I'm asking for the voters to put me to work as your next Hinds County Circuit Court Judge for Subdistrict 2. On November 8th, please pray for me and then vote Trent Walker, Hinds County Circuit Court Judge. Thank y'all.
Thanks, Trent. Brian.
I guess I'll follow suit. Good evening. I'm Brian Guy. Can y'all hear me? Yes. All right. I am a candidate nationally for Hinds County Circuit Judge. I'm the only one on the ballot that served as a law clerk for Judge Green. She served for 24 years. I am a husband and a father of 2 college-age children. We have been members of Cade Chapel for 20-plus years. I've resided in Subdistrict 2 for 23-plus years. I hail from Marshall County, which is North Mississippi. Anybody familiar with Russ College? My father was a career Marine, so we traveled a lot. And lately, one of the duty stations was Camp Lejeune. So the same water issues that we're facing here in Jackson, unfortunately, we face there too. Drank some of that same nasty water. Look, professionally, after leaving the clerkship with Judge Green, I clerked or served as an associate attorney with the firm of Davis Galston Williams, practiced bankruptcy, personal injury, and some workers' comp. Once I left the firm of Davis Galston Williams, I served as a special assistant attorney general for about 17 months. Traveled all over the state handling contracts, termination of parental rights actions, personnel actions. After I left that firm, or that agency rather, excuse me, I opened my own firm, and for the past 17 years, I've managed a solo practice. I have practiced bankruptcy, personal injury, minor criminal offenses, represented both plaintiff and defendants in that time as well. I've also, for the past 10-plus years, I've served as a special judge in youth court under several administrations, Judge Skinner, Judge McDaniels, Judge Priester, and currently under Judge Hicks. I have also worked with legal services. I assist them with their low-income clients as far as bankruptcies. I'm running because I have the temperament, I have the experience, and I'm prepared to make a long-term commitment to the citizens of Hinds County. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's give all these candidates a round of applause. All right, very good. One more time, let's give these candidates a round of applause. I thank you for offering yourselves as public servants. Hinds County is indeed grateful. Deborah Gibbs talked about this being her district, and so that's a great transition for me to introduce Representative Bo Brown, who may have to tip out a little early. But in the world of redistricting, this may become Representative Bo Brown's district. So let's just give him a round of applause. Bo, thank you for being with us. So they are extending his lines. Would you care to share just a couple of words?
Correct. I'm reporting to duty. This still is going to be my
Already done, huh? It's just a matter of voting. I got you. Gotcha. Thank you very much for being here. The rules tonight are very, 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 very simple. I want to introduce our timekeeper. There he is. Vincent is our timekeeper. So you guys make sure you look at Vincent, respect Vincent's signs and any motion that he gives you. The rules are extremely simple tonight. We'll give each candidate an opportunity to answer the question. You will have 1 minute to answer the question, and depending on how we are doing with time, we may even circle back. So you'll have 1 minute to address each question. Members of the audience, you are encouraged to write your questions down, or we will pass a mic if time permits to gather questions from the audience. All right, we do have a mic there, so we'll circulate that mic through the audience. All right, so we're going to go ahead and begin, and I'm going to take a moment of executive privilege and present some of the questions that were submitted to me for each candidate, and I'll ask each candidate the same question. And again, you have 1 minute to answer the question. And Bryant, we'll begin with you and work our way down the other way. Question number 1 that was presented to me: please expound on your court experience within the criminal and civil systems. Please expound on your court experience within the criminal and civil systems. Bryant, you've got 1 minute.
For the past 17 years, I have managed a small law office. I have practiced both civil and criminal matters. As lawyers, we would indicate where we're first chair, second chair. For 17 years, I've been first chair. Every case on any matter comes through me. I have appeared in court, whether it's hearing, trial, whatever it is. I have handled those extensively. There have been countless trials. I can't sit here and tell you every number. I don't know all the outcomes at this point, having served as a judge as well as a lawyer, but I've been in court for a long time. I've actually practiced 22 years, and we were in court prior to that.
All right, thank you. Trent, same question. Please expound on your court experience within the criminal and civil systems.
Well, as I said earlier, I've been a practicing attorney for 26 years. I tried my first case, which was actually a civil case involving a car wreck, back in 1997. And I have been constantly in court practically every year since then. Point of fact, 1 year I tried over 10 cases the same year. So I've been doing this a long time, and litigation is indeed what I do. Every day I'm either in court or getting ready to go to court. As I said, I have a criminal law practice that involves everything from accusations of first-degree murder down to shoplifting. I said earlier, I'm the public defender for the city of Lexington. Those involve misdemeanors, everything from simple assault to second offense DUI. So the gamut of the cases that I've run has gone extensively for 26 years. Thank y'all.
Wendy, same question. Please expound on your court experience within the criminal and civil systems.
Thank you. When I graduated from law school back in 2001, I joined an insurance defense firm and immediately went straight into, you can't hear me? Immediately went straight into the courtroom. During my first 3 years at Curry Johnson, I tried in excess of 20 jury trials. Tort reform had some impact on that. I then went immediately to Richmond, Simon and Napson, a small plaintiff's firm, and there again practiced extensively in a courtroom. I have 21 years of courtroom and trial experience. When I joined the city of Jackson as its chief city prosecutor, I picked up even more courtroom experience because there I was in the courtroom on a daily basis, sometimes walking in with as many as 60 files in my hand to try. I am now an assistant district attorney in Hinds County, and yet again, I am in the courtroom on a fairly daily basis. I have an extensive history of being in the courtroom and trying cases. I would have to imagine that I've seen pretty much every fact pattern and circumstance.
All right, it's got to be Deborah's time, but just so that I'm clear, that's your. That means time. Thank you. All right, just so that I'm clear. All right, Deborah, same question to you. Please talk about your experience in both criminal and civil.
I'll start with my experience in the Mississippi Supreme Court. As I mentioned earlier, I was a law clerk for the Mississippi Supreme Court. I read all the briefs that came back from the lower court, and I worked in the Supreme Court where I looked at those appeals to determine whether or not they gave me the opportunity to say if I agreed with those rulings or not. I have also had a solo practice where I did with plaintiffs' attorneys, and then I was a commissioner of Mississippi Workers' Compensation. That was a gubernatorial appointment where I worked for over 5 years doing hearings every day. About 60 a year with bench hearings where I had civil cases for those injured workers in the state of Mississippi to determine whether or not they were to be rehabilitated or given the rights that they had under the law. I also did settlement hearings every day, which is about 1,200 almost a year, because we worked every day doing settlement hearings. So my work has been in the civil area, and I'm also of counsel at Gibbs Travis. Another piece that I think I want you to know is that in the legislature, I serve on Judiciary A and Judiciary B, and it's time.
And that's your time. Trent, this question will start with you. Why do you want this job?
Well, as I said earlier, I've extensively prepared to do this job. I've done this job before. I know how to do it. But I want this job because Hinds County is in need of consistent and steady leadership. And my record as a lawyer and in the courtroom has been exemplary. I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I don't hear very many bad things about myself. So,
I wonder why.
I'm able to get along with people and still firmly reach the result that needs to be reached, and to keep everything consistent. But again, we need consistency and we need integrity and accountability in Hinds County, and I'm able to provide that.
Very good. Wendy, same question. Why do you want this gig?
I want to be your next Hinds County Circuit Court Judge in District 2 because, as I said to you earlier, Jackson and Hinds County are very dear to me. This is home. I have lived through the change, and I don't like where we are now. I have the experience. I've been practicing law over 21 years now. I want to be a part of the change and the difference that our city and county need. I think people with mental illness need to be addressed. We can offer them more. Our juveniles are in a crisis. I'm raising children here, as are many of you. We need to address our children and get them turned around and on the right track. They need to be educated. They need to be stopped before they make it to circuit court where I am, so that I don't have to make a decision about what should happen to them. We need to save our kids and reverse the direction. I want to be a part of the solution. I have put in 21 years of hard work. I'm prepared. I'm experienced. I'm ready for this. I want to help turn Jackson and Hinds County around.
Thank you. Well, Deborah, same question. Why do you want this gig?
because I made the decision a long time ago to be a public servant. And I have served this community for over 30 years, ever since I came to Jackson. My family's from Jackson. My mother grew up around Ferry Street and is a graduate from Lanier High School. So I have been working in this community since I came here due to a career opportunity. The job of a judge is to preside over cases and to do so quickly and swiftly and firmly. I'm capable of doing that. When I said that I worked on the bench at the Mississippi Workers' Compensation Commission, I did that over 5 years. I've been a judge before. I worked with administrative judges, and I had to administer that state agency. So I'm more than qualified to be a circuit court judge. I have had to work with plaintiffs. I've had to help injured workers, and I did that every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Brian, same question. Why do you want this gig?
A very wise woman once told me, law clerks are judges in training. So I've had some training. I've also served as I indicated, special judge in youth court for well over 10 years. I have the temperament, the experience, and the commitment to do so, and the commitment to continue to serve. So that's pretty much it for me.
All right, very good. Wendy, we'll begin this round of questions with you. And the question is, please identify the knowledge, skills, and abilities to be a competent judge.
Experience, and I say I have that in 21 years of very actively practicing law, being in and out of the courtroom on a daily basis, meeting with offenders or having conversations with defense counsel, meeting with victims, working with the corporations, the insurance companies, the mentally ill, the different mental health facilities. I've been at the table during all of that. I think it takes dedication. I think it takes wisdom. I think it takes having touched so many people and so many different types of cases, and I've done that. I just have a wealth, a bank from which to draw to be a good circuit court judge.
All right, very good. Deborah? I can, with pleasure. Please identify the knowledge, skills, and abilities to be a competent judge.
First of all, I would say that, needless to say, that I have a law degree, and I did very well in law school. I have the mental capacity to be a good judge. And first of all, I know how to balance common sense with applying the law and having compassion with the law. I stated that I worked at the Mississippi Supreme Court, where I was trained to be able to read briefs and know what was relevant experience and witnesses that would speak to the matter and not. I have worked at the Workers' Compensation Commission, and I have worked with most attorneys in the state that practice workers' compensation. So I have the temperament and the ability to preside. I can make firm, swift decisions because I've had to do so. And so that would make me a competent judge by the fact of what I've done in this community, that I'm dedicated, I'm passionate, I have the mental capacity to do it, and the work ethic to be a good judge on the bench.
All right, very good. Brian? Please identify the knowledge, skills, and abilities to be a competent judge.
I believe that experience is required. Naturally, we're licensed attorneys, but I think having represented people, gone to court, had some negative experiences where you know a judge's mind is made up before you even open your mouth on behalf of a client is one thing you don't want. I've had the opportunity, as I indicated, to serve as a special judge in youth court, where cases are called up, you hear the evidence, at the conclusion of the evidence, you have to make an immediate decision. So you have to develop the ability to listen to both sides of the argument and then make a decision. And that decision may not be popular, but it's going to be something that's going to affect a person's lives, or whether they go home, whether they're confined, or what have you. But the ability to listen is very key, and having some compassion to understand the people that came in front of you that particular day probably made a mistake, wasn't their best day, but treat people the way you want to be treated. Really kind of simple.
All right, very good. Trent, same question. Please identify the knowledge, skills, and abilities to be a competent judge.
Well, first of all, as you said, you have to have knowledge. And like Ms. Gibbs, I too clerked at the Mississippi Supreme Court back in 1996. You have to have experience, and I've expounded. I have over 60 jury trials, so I know what it's like to actually be a practicing attorney. And sometimes when you are in court, sometimes you do get the feeling that maybe the judge has forgotten what it's like to be a practicing attorney. So I would never forget that. Thirdly, you have to be fair. What works for one party may not work for another one. You cannot have just a cookie cutter solution for everything. You have to look at each case individually and judge that case individually. Finally, and I think this is really important, I believe timeliness is something that each judge should have because you have to respect everyone's time. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Trent. Deborah, you'll begin this round of questions. You know, oftentimes Hinds County is compared to other counties, right? You know, we've heard in recent weeks folks saying that criminals, if they could get to the county line, if they could get to Hinds County, they'll be okay. Things will be different in Hinds County. The question tonight, though, is what is your view on bonds? Do you think oftentimes that bonds are low for violent crimes in Hinds County?
Very controversial question, Oakley.
Oh, you got it.
What I would say about bonds from a judicial perspective is that judges have to be fair and impartial. And judges do not enact the law. They interpret and apply the law. And judges are normally done at the lower courts, that be the county or the judicial or the municipal courts. And so they use their discretion in terms of what the bond is going to be, or how it's going to be set based on the crime that was committed. And so normally that doesn't come to the circuit court until they get to the indictment stage, when the person has been indicted at the circuit court level, then that's when the judge really comes into play. Most of those bonds are done at the lower court. Now, for me, I'm supposed to be fair and impartial, so I'm not going to state what I would or wouldn't do. I'm going to enact the law and apply the law as it's supposed to be.
All right, very good. Brian?
Purpose of bond, as said, is to guarantee a defendant's appearance at trial. It is not to punish. It should be something that's reasonable. Now, we're human just like anyone else. We're tired of going outside, as my colleagues have indicated, hearing shots or whatever's going on in the neighborhood. But the point of a bond is to guarantee a defendant's appearance at trial. It is not to set it so high that they have to sit in jail if they're entitled to a bond. There are some instances where individuals are not entitled to bond. But again, you have to understand it is designed strictly to guarantee their appearance to come back to court. Now, I would add that circuit judges don't really get to bond. The initial appearances are either in justice court, county, or the municipal court. That's where the person's initial bond is set. So then if it's reviewed in the county court by the county court judge. So circuit judges don't really address bond until they may be the third judge dealing with that. But again, the purpose of a bond is to guarantee a defendant's appearance in court.
All right, thank you. That's your time. Trent?
While you do not want to use bonds to be punitive before a person has had their day in court, there's already a set of factors, or actually two sets of factors, that judges are supposed to use when they decide how bonds, how high or how low to set a bond. The first one is set out by the Mississippi Supreme Court in the case of Lee versus Lawson, and there's an 8-factor test there. Then the Mississippi Rules of Criminal Court also set out the factors that are to be used. I would point to one of those factors, which is likelihood of guilt. By the time you're at the circuit court level and the court is deciding bond, the lawyer who's asking for the bond has to address those factors. And one of those things, they need to say, okay, well, what are the circumstances? So the judge actually has to look at what's the likelihood that this person is going to be found guilty of what it is that they're accused of. You cannot kill a gnat with a sledgehammer, and so you have to be fair to everybody. You can't give $1 million bond for a simple assault case. You just can't. So, thank y'all.
Thank you. As part of my work as an assistant district attorney here in Hinds County, Prior to, I guess just a few months ago, I was in the courtroom on a weekly basis, participating actively so in preliminary hearings. And what happens there is those persons who are dissatisfied primarily with the bond that they received at their initial appearance in municipal court come before the county court judge and ask that that bond be revisited. Well, I was on the side of that to bring out those facts that the court would need to hear so that the court could arrive at what would be appropriate, and I made arguments as to what I thought on behalf of the state would be appropriate. Now, one thing that concerns me when we're addressing bonds is, one, the charge that you've been accused of. You are innocent until proven guilty, but a lot of facts come out at that stage. But what you also have to balance is the threat to public safety. So you may be entitled to a bond, but I have to balance that with what threat you pose to the public safety. I need you to be safe. I need myself to be safe.
All right, very good. Thank you very much for that. I just want to insert here that this judicial forum is being streamed on Pine Grove's Facebook page. So if you want to tag your friends and let them know that it is live on Pine Grove's Facebook page. All right, Brian, I think you lead the answers to this series of questions. This question is a two-part question, and so we'll hover in the space of bond for just a moment or two longer. And this question is, how long should a defendant be held in custody without an indictment and a bond? And then the second part of this question is, what is the current policy in place regarding defendants held in jail before review by the circuit court? And I'll repeat the first part for you. How long should a defendant be held in custody without an indictment and bond?
If I'm not mistaken, that should be 120 days for the first part. Now, the second part of your question was what again?
The second part of the question is, what is the current policy in place regarding defendants held in jail before review by the circuit court?
My understanding, the senior circuit judge has a policy in place of a 90-day review for those who have not been indicted after arrest, sitting in detention, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, very good. Trent, I'll repeat the question for you, sir. How long should a defendant be held in custody without an indictment and bond?
Well, the rule, according to the Mississippi Rules of Criminal Procedure, is that everyone should be indicted within 120 days. They've not been indicted within 120 days, then the senior circuit court judge would then review, and I have filed those applications for review before, and the senior circuit court judge would then go back and look at those factors that I enunciated a few minutes ago to decide whether or not that person should be entitled to a bond. But people cannot stay in jail indefinitely unindicted. At some point in time, regardless of what they are accused of, at some point in time, constitutionally, they're going to be entitled to bond. So as a circuit court judge, what I would do is try to encourage the indictment process to speed up as much as we can, while also making sure that we dot all the I's and cross all the T's, or that the district attorney's office does. Thank you.
Very good. Wendy, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes.
All right, very good. So how long should a defendant be held in custody without an indictment and bond? And then the second part is, what is the current policy in place regarding defendants held in jail before review by the circuit court?
When you say before review by a circuit court, could you explain that for me?
So honestly, I cannot. This was a question that was submitted, but I am assuming before the circuit court takes action.
I'm not clear on that question, but I'll do my best. As it relates to holding defendants and not bringing them before the court, there is a time limit on that. As it relates to before the circuit court reviews it, I'm sorry, I'm just not clear on that question, but what we have to understand about indictment, in order for us to get to the indictment stage, there are a lot of moving parts. You know, we first may think of circuit court and the DA's office, but you have to have something to present to the grand jury in order to get a true bill or indictment. And sometimes, depending on the case and the facts and the persons involved, the circumstances, unfortunately, sometimes it takes longer in some cases than others. So there really is a case-by-case basis, unfortunately, you know, and in that position, you do the best you can to get what you need so that you can go forward. You don't want to step on anyone's rights along the way and rush the process. You want to be fair and impartial and just as you do that.
Okay, thank you. Deborah, would you like me to repeat the question?
Oh, I got it.
I'm sorry.
I'm fine.
Okay, good deal.
Yeah, I was going to agree with my colleagues to what they said as far as the time is concerned, and just add, like I said earlier, that once a person is indicted, that's when they come before the circuit judge. And I think because we have such a high crime rate, and people want to understand how the lower process works. So I think that's where those questions are coming from. But when a person is arrested, they are bonded, and they are processed first, and then they go before initial appearance before a judge to determine whether or not they're going to plead guilty or they're not, and they are in jail if they cannot bond out. And so I think that's what those questions are coming from in terms of, but people do have to have their due process, and there are constitutional rights that they do have.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question, Tripp, you'll take the lead on this. This question is, what do you perceive as the greatest obstacle to justice in Hinds County, if any?
Speed. In a word, when I talk to people, and in my observation, working in the criminal justice system every day, being able to get from arrest to indictment and then from indictment to resolution. People complain about bonds, but what people also complain about is having cases that are 4 and 5 and 6 years old that are still not resolved. And so what I would concentrate on is speeding up the process, having everybody on a scheduling order and being strict about it, and making them have to actually show good cause to go outside of that scheduling order. Some things I do think that the audience needs to understand. Some things are beyond the courts or, for that matter, the district attorney's abilities. As for instance, they have no control over the state crime lab or how long it takes for a autopsy to come in. Right. You know, that's something that the legislature is going to have to solve in terms of funding, because you have one crime lab, you have one medical examiner that covers the entire state. But to the extent that I have control of the process, we will make sure that it's a speedy process.
All right, thank you. Wendy.
Thank you. If there's actually more than one thing that I think impedes justice here in Hinds County, and I'll start with one crime, the rampant rate at which crime is being committed. Then we have a shortage of law enforcement officers. There's only so much that our limited force can do. I believe they're stretched. Then we make it over to the crime lab. It's short-staffed, so that again impedes the process. There are just so many moving pieces that have to be addressed, and in my opinion, you will have to start from the bottom and work your way up. You also have to realize, too, that a circuit court judge not only deals with criminal matters, it deals with civil matters. And you've heard before, you can't try your way out of this. We're already at 90-plus homicides this year. You have 4 circuit court judges to deal with that. If you split that docket down the middle, you're talking about 26 weeks civil, 26 weeks criminal. It takes a balancing act. You have to pay attention to the older cases, the newer cases, and all of the other deficits that Hinds County deals with.
All right, very good. Deborah.
And I'll pick up from that point when I said in my introduction about the holistic process. You need someone on the bench who can understand the holistic process, and that's what they are saying, that you have to understand it from the beginning to the end and be able to work together to make our judicial system effective. I've spoken to law enforcement, I've spoken to judges, I've spoken to lawyers, and they all have differences of opinion, but most of it is the same. They want that docket to move swiftly. and they want to have speedy trials, but a lot of things impede that. And so my experience on the legislature, being able to work and network to be able to get funding and to bring those things to bear, even now I'm trying to do that, to see how we can make our judicial system move faster. So there are a lot of moving parts, but being able to work with that whole system, which I've had to do that by being on Judiciary A and Judiciary B in the Mississippi legislature, that we deal with civil and criminal crimes, working with people around the state in the judicial system to make our judicial system better. I have that contact. I have the network. I work with law enforcement. I work with the public safety commissioner. I work with the sheriff. So I'm capable of putting all that holistic process together to make a difference for Hinds County.
All right, Brian.
The greatest obstacle that I see is twofold. Naturally, it's the amount of time it takes for cases to get to trial, both civil and criminal. As my colleagues have indicated, you can only try civil cases so many weeks. You can only try criminal cases so many weeks. And unfortunately, certain cases and civil cases have been pending for some time, and certain criminal cases may have been pending for some time. But when these cases finally come to trial, as a part of our system, you understand that judges, or as circuit judges, we don't try the cases, we don't arrest people, and we certainly don't convict or award in a civil case. Juries do that. So as citizens, if we don't show up for jury duty, that affects the ability for our system to operate at its optimum. That's what I see as the greatest obstacles to justice at this point.
All right, thank you very much. Wendy, we'll begin with you for this round. What is your plan to reduce the backlog or get that docket cleared in Hinds County?
You know, we hear a lot about the backlog in Hinds County, and I understand what that means and what it looks like, because I'm working in that on a daily basis. We do have some old cases on our docket, and it's not possible to keep up at the rate at which new cases continue to come into the courtroom. But my plan, should I be elected Hinds County Circuit Court Judge, is to strike a balance between those older cases and the newer cases. Of course, you can't try all of them, and you do want there to be some resolve. And a lot of that, or some of that rather, would take place by way of plea. But if I'm elected Circuit Court Judge, what I endeavor to do is work. I want to be there. I will be there on a daily basis, addressing my docket, sitting with other professionals in the legal field to try to arrive at the best way to clear that docket. I think there needs to be a balance between the older cases and the newer cases, and we work our way back to middle until we eliminate that backlog.
Very good. Deborah.
I'm working right now to address that issue. We've introduced legislation, though we have additional judges to come in to help with the criminal cases. I'm working with the public safety, the commissioner, to come in to find out what resources and staff we need for the crime lab. I'm also working with law enforcement and the courts to try to figure out the things that we need to do to put in place. If you've heard today, there's a lot of moving parts. And so I'm working now to make sure that we can have the resources that we need. This past session, I have introduced a bill to give more funding to the police department. I've tried to do things to help them get better investigators and to raise their pay so that we can have adequate investigations going on. So a lot of it deals with resources, a lot of it deals with staff. And so I'm doing what I can do now before I get to the bench to make sure that we have those resources in place, and I will continue to do that. With my expertise and my knowledge that I have, I will be able to continue to do that, to make headway on what we need to have so we can have an efficient and competent judicial system.
Thank you, Deborah. Brian.
Well, I would implement some scheduling orders, or really a form scheduling order for criminal cases where there are certain deadlines. I would always, though, allow for a person to plea. I think that's important. If they want to resolve their case, that would help our system. Again, we have to rely on the other moving parts. There's the district attorney's office, there's the public defender's office, and the defense bar that have a role to play in moving cases along as well. But certainly with the scheduling orders and then holding the parties' feet to the fire in terms of having some trials, because you would have to address a lot of the older cases, either some type of disposition, either dismissal or forcing a trial, doing something in terms of trying to get something moved in terms of some justice for the victims. Thank you.
Thank you. Trent?
In a lot of ways, it's kind of restating the last question. Again, speed is what it is that is the issue. What I need people to realize, when a person is indicted, there's really about 3 directions that this case can go. It can be dismissed by the DA's office, there can be a plea, or there can be a trial. As a judge, what I will do is, as quickly as possible, we need to be deciding which one of these tracks that we are on. If you're not going to take a plea and the DA's office is not going to dismiss, then you need to be on a trial track. And if we stick to that, we stick to that scheduling order and make people show good cause to go outside of it, then I believe we can get there.
All right, thank you very much. Deborah, we'll begin with you with this question. Do judges have an obligation to improve public understanding of the courts? If so, how should they carry out that obligation?
Most definitely. Since I've been in the state legislature, I've had town halls that I've implemented and town halls that I go to. As a matter of fact, I had one the other week at Presidential Hills, and they were asking some of the same questions that we're addressing today, and that's because they don't understand. And so judges can give educational information. They don't talk about specific cases and things like that, but it's good for the electorate to understand the judicial system. It's good for students and children to know about the judicial system and what's illegal and what's legal, so that they don't have to come down to get in the arena of having to be in circuit court. So my role would be to educate and to be willing and available to go wherever I'm called to give you information of the judicial process, particularly for children, so that they can understand what they need not to do, so we don't have to see them in circuit court. My philosophy would be to be able to reduce the number of judges, because we don't have a lot of crime going on. Wouldn't that be a good thing? That we don't want a job like that. We want to be able to reduce the number of people that come before us in circuit court. So yes, we need education for our community.
All right, very good. Brian?
Yes, the judges as well as the legal profession would have an obligation to educate the public. We are controlled by the judicial canons and the rules of professional responsibility about what representations we can make, but certainly we have an obligation to educate folks. So as a candidate and as a sitting judge, you know, again, we can't make promises and certain representations, but we certainly can educate on issues or instances that would come before us. So certainly there is the obligation, and it's our moral duty any further. Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you. Trent?
Well, starting off with the fact that judges are not able to speak to specific cases that have attended or may likely come before them. Judges are able to accept speaking engagements where they can speak generally about the law and their concept of how the law works. So I think that there are opportunities to explain to the general public so that they do have a better understanding of the judicial system, but a judge would not be able to comment on any specific case that they have ruled on or that they may have cause to rule on in the future.
Would you repeat your question for me?
Yes, let me go back and find that one. Do judges have an obligation to improve public understanding of the courts? If so, how should they carry out that obligation? And that's a general question, not a specific case-oriented question per judge.
Thank you. I believe they do, and that is why the third re of my platform, Redefining Justice, is re-educating our community and our juveniles. I do believe that we need to be educated. Now, how will we do that? We need to reach our young people as early as possible, and whenever we have contact with adults, You know, say for example, when they're being screened for jury duty, take advantage of that time to educate them. You know, for 7 years, I worked as a full-time criminal justice professor, all while being an attorney advocate with Disability Rights Mississippi and serving the city of Jackson as its chief city prosecutor. Education has always been very important to me. And you can rest assured that should I be elected Circuit Court Judge in District 2, education would be top priority.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so Brian, we're going to start with you, and then we'll take a question from the audience if you have any. All right. So Brian, on this question, so we've had in recent weeks, recent months, there have been some tough cases that have come before the circuit court, and there has been an upheaval in the community that perhaps certain judges should not have tried the case. The question tonight, though, is what is your view on recusal of judges on controversial cases? What would be your standard?
Really quite simple. We're bound by the judicial canons, the case law, and if there is going to be essentially an issue where, well, as lawyers, and for 22 years, I'm sure my colleagues can attest, you avoid the appearance of any impropriety. And so if there's any type of interest or someone that would impact or affect your ability to decide impartially and fairly, we let the canons and the rules and there's case law decide that. And so if it was something that impacted my community, which essentially my community, if elected, would be Hinds County, I would have to look at the canons and then decide whether I could continue to preside or just recuse.
All right, and I didn't understand one part of your answer. You would have to look at what? I didn't hear that clearly.
I'm sorry, the judicial canons, the rules that we're bound to follow.
All right, very good. All right, Chair?
Well, I think that people elect judges to make the tough decisions and to sit on the tough cases, and I don't think that a judge ought to recuse just because one side or the other is not going to be pleased about the outcome. That is why we're here. You elect judges to make hard decisions, and in every case there is going to be a losing side, one way or the other, because most cases involve at least two parties. Somebody is going to leave out of the courtroom not happy. So if you don't want to make that decision, you should not put your name in the hat. As to the second part of the question, if it would appear to be improper, if it would appear that there is a conflict of interest, then the judge should not sit on the case. But if the judge has no relationship to the parties or has no relationship to the case, then the judge ran to make tough decisions.
Glad you used the word relationship. Wendy?
Yes, as it relates to tough cases, if you can imagine being a prosecutor for the last 8 years and having been born and raised here in Jackson and Hinds County, it should be unimaginable to you how many tough cases I've encountered as a part of my daily work. That's what I signed up for. I see people very often who I know walk into the courtroom and they're either the accused or they are the offender. But at the end of the day, a decision has to be made. As a judge, it's not about stepping away when it's a case that you don't want to be associated with. If you cannot be fair and impartial, however, you do an injustice to everyone if you sit in judgment of that. Now, you have to do some soul searching as it relates to that. I mean, you at the same time, you need to own up to what your job duties and responsibilities are and what you have been elected to do. So I would not be the judge to shy away from those tough cases. Tough cases have to be resolved as well as those that are not deemed tough.
Thank you. Deborah?
The rule says that judges must be fair and impartial. And if you have your mind made up on a case, you shouldn't preside over a case. And we don't want judges to just always take, because I know there's been a lot of conversation in the community, why they keep accusing themselves. But if you know you will not be fair and impartial, and your mind is already made up on a case, then you should not be sitting on the case.
All right, very good. And perhaps not even run if you have to recuse yourself, right? All right, so we're at the 7:30 mark. We're at the 7:30 mark, and it's time now to turn our attention to the audience, and we will solicit questions from the audience if you have any. There's a mic somewhere floating around. There's a mic there. All right, we have a question here. Yep. And we'll come to you next. Malcolm.
I'm a registered voter in Hinds County, and I've been chosen several times to be on jury duty. And I never, ever recuse myself from serving on jury duty, except one time. I went to the courthouse, and the courthouse was in such poor condition. I was truly embarrassed, in addition to the fact that I was very afraid that the courthouse may not have been well maintained in terms of COVID protocols. So in that instance, I recused myself from service. First time I ever done that. So my question to the candidates is, what duty do the judges have for maintaining the buildings?
All right, Trent, we'll begin with you.
The duty to maintain the buildings falls on the Board of Supervisors. It does not fall on the judges. And to the extent that there is an issue that devolves upon the Board of Supervisors who hire and maintain the maintenance crew. So the judges cannot order that the building be kept in a particular manner. During COVID in 2020 and 2021, what the judges did was they put plexiglass in so that there could be some amount of separation. And they did try to institute protocols so that court could be ongoing, but there was a slowdown. So I hope that answers your question.
Wendy?
Thank you. One thing that I noticed that if we're speaking specifically to the safety protocols put in place in response to COVID, I've noticed too that some of the judges, the courtroom that I was in primarily, what they did was make sure that everyone was socially distanced. So everyone may not have been able to sit inside the jury box. So you had to limit the spectators so that everyone inside the courtroom would be safe. In addition to that, if I'm not mistaken, all of the judges have instituted a plexiglass system. The judge would not be responsible for the issues of maintenance and upkeep, but those are some issues that could definitely be addressed by the judge and passed up to the appropriate persons.
Okay, very good. Deborah?
I have a different answer than that. I think, and as I go around and talk to jurors who have served, they've told me that in some instances that they did not want to serve if they felt unsafe and if they didn't feel welcome at the courthouse. I think that a judge run their courtroom. You hear that a lot, that a judge can run their courtroom, and they're correct about the county is supposed to keep up the building. But I think that a judge can talk to the county to make sure that the courtroom and that building is up to standard. As a state representative, I've done that as a state representative in terms of making sure that people are safe. If you look at the courthouse now, the steps in the front does not have rubber matting on it, and the rail needs to be fixed. I know I see a city official there, but not from the county. And so I have concern about people who go into that building to make sure that they are safe. So even though that may not be my official duty.
Deborah. That's your time. Thank you. Brian?
Well, I agree with my other panelists. I don't believe it's the job of a circuit judge to make sure the ceiling tiles aren't falling or that basic maintenance. But I would agree with, especially while we were under the COVID restrictions, to make sure that social distancing masks were worn. And even the use and implementation of video, closed circuit TV and that sort of thing, and other options in terms of keeping the court moving. And I will say I had some experience as a law clerk. I know circuit judges cut orders directing certain things happen in there. courtrooms. Sometimes those orders may get challenged, but there is the ability to exercise some discretion. So, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Question here? Mr. Mike? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Malcolm Johnson here. There's a young lady here tonight, and mental illness is real. We hadn't heard anything about mental illness and where the Fort candidates stand on that. And we know the state underfunds mental illness, so what do they have in mind with it in Hinds County?
Well, it's interesting that Wendy gets to tackle this question first because she did mention mental illness. Wendy, we'll let you expound.
Again, my platform is redefining justice, and the second re of redefining justice is reevaluating mental health. I do understand that we have mental health illnesses, mental health issues here that are plaguing us in our community, and they are spilling over into the judicial system, particularly the criminal justice system. I see where the two intersect, and the way I want to address that is to partner with mental health professionals who on the front end can be a part of the process and assist with making sure mental illness is first identified and then fully addressed. You know, we have to treat mental illness, and you're right, we are limited in terms of resources. We never have enough money, or it seems as though we don't, but there is more we can do. When mental health or mental illness meets the criminal justice system, that could indeed be a recipe for disaster. I also want to have a mental health court and mental health docket so that I can carve out cases that have underlying mental health issues and make sure they're
That's your
handled
time,
appropriately.
Wendy. Thank you. Deborah?
And those concerns that's been addressed can be addressed in the Mississippi legislature. That's where you would get funding for those items that was just mentioned. In terms of identifying that. A judge would not know if a person had a mental illness unless that was brought up and that the defense asked for someone to be tested because they are showing some issues of mental illness. But in terms of dealing with mental illness, then having resources outside of the court, then the legislature, in my opinion, would be the persons that would have to deal with that to get your proper funding, and other nonprofit organizations that deal with mental illness.
All right, very good. Brian?
Having had the opportunity to represent an individual on a criminal matter in a neighboring county that had a mental issue, the process is your judge, there's a determination as far as their competency first. The judge has to determine whether they're competent to stand trial. As a part of that process, they're evaluated by a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Now, in my particular case, I disagreed with the person, but the judge disagreed with me, and the person stood trial. They were in a mental health facility. It was a low, well, I can't get into too many facts, but it was a low supervision type of situation, but it was clear to me that this person had an issue. The whole case tended around that. So there's a need for that. Now, as a part of this process in Hinds County, there is a senior circuit judge that dictates some of the policies. So working with the senior judge in terms of dealing with some of these mental health issues.
And come January, that senior judge is Winston Kidd, right?
That is correct.
Okay, very good. Trey?
Thank you. I have to disagree with my friend Wendy in one instance. There's actually already a mental health court, and it's actually under the auspices of the Chancery Court. Currently, I serve as one of the special masters for commitments who decides whether or not mentally ill people are able to be served as outpatients or if they are to be committed to Whitfield. As it involves the criminal justice system, again, you have a process in that you can, as a defense lawyer, make a motion for a mental competency exam. That standard is actually pretty high for someone to be excused from culpability for a criminal act. And then the secondary issue that you need to look at is the Chancery Court actually cannot look at cases where there are outstanding criminal charges. So really, in order to get in front of the Chancery Court, you pretty much have to have no criminal charges outstanding. So it's It's difficult, but there's state laws that apply to it.
All right, very good. Any other questions from the audience? No? All right, so, oh, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, Pastor Fields here, pastor of Pine Grove. I'm the local pastor, and you all are here in this area. You're soliciting the votes of the people of this area. I know that you all will sit on the bench as judge, but what is it that you can bring to this community to benefit this community? Yes, judicial, but what can we do to prevent our children and other people? What judicial law platforms or programs can you bring to this area to help the people, if that makes sense?
unpack it one more time.
Okay.
Share it one more time.
What can you do as a judge? What can the people benefit from you? That's that simple as that. As a judge in this area, we know that the sheriff governs the sheriff department. We know that DA do all of that. What can you as a judge? What can the people benefit from you?
All right, Deborah, you take the first stab at that one. What do you bring to the table, essentially? What do you offer the community, right? What do you bring? How can the community benefit with your becoming the next circuit court judge in Hinds County?
I would say the essence of who I am. I'm a person with integrity, honesty, a good work ethic, and I've been a servant leader, and I made that decision to be able to serve. We talked about education, so I would be available to come to Pine Grove or to wherever I'm asked to come to serve. As I've served for 6 years as a public official, I've been accountable and I've been accessible. I would do the same thing if I'm sitting on the bench as your next circuit court judge for Sub-District 2. Someone that you have trust in and the ability to do the job that I would take the oath to do. I've taken about 3 oaths as being a licensed attorney, being a commissioner of workers' compensation, and being the legislature for the state of Mississippi. And every oath that I have taken, I've done what I had pledged to do, to be honest, to serve, to be accountable, and to be accessible, and to know my job. So needless to say, I'm going to know my job at circuit court, but I'm going to be here to be accessible and accountable to the people of Sub-District 2.
All right, very good. Brian.
Having worked with the youth court and currently working with Judge Hicks, we need to educate the folks in the community, especially as it relates to the youth, about the services that are offered when a child, for a delinquent matter, and even an abuse and neglect matter, but delinquent matters are when a child commits a crime. There are services that are offered in the home. You're trying not to have the child locked up. The point of youth court is not punishment, it is rehabilitation. So there are several counseling services and centers that children are referred to, and often some mentoring programs as well. So it's really just being made aware of what's already in place, and certainly continue to expand those. And if a child, because not every child, just because they commit a felony, is worthy of it. There's a process where you look to review whether they have had enough intervention or services being offered to the child to determine whether they should.
That's your time, Trey.
Thank you. Pastor Fields, I see your question in 2 parts. Number one, I think I spoke earlier about judges are able to engage in speaking engagements. So if you invite me, if it is at all possible, I will come. And I'm happy to speak with the youth and to the adults with regard to the functioning of the justice system. The second thing that I see where a judge can engage, I do believe that there can be partnerships with mentoring groups. I'm a member of 100 Black Men, and whose sole purpose for existing is to mentor young black males. And I believe that in order to keep kids out of the criminal justice system, we do need more of that mentoring. And one other point that I will make is that when I take somebody to do a plea, one of the questions that's on the plea petition is how far did you go in school? 85 to 90% of the time, When I'm having somebody, they did not
Trent,
finish
that's
high
your
school.
time, sir. Thank you. Wendy?
Thank you. I'm going to go back to my platform of redefining justice. And if you recall, the 3 Re's of that were refocusing our crime fighting efforts. The one thing I would do to address the community and its need to feel justice as much as we think the offender needs to see justice is by holding people accountable. I think accountability goes a long way. I think that's how we restore trust and confidence in this judicial system. I also talked to you about mental illness. You as family members, or those of you or those of us who live with mental illness, need to know that should we find ourselves in this judicial system, more specifically the criminal justice system, that we will receive the attention that we need and we will be treated fairly in the process. And I also talked to you about education. Education is key. We need to reach our young people as early as we can, as well as the community, and let the community know how vital of a part they are in this process. So I believe redefining justice actually addresses the community's concerns.
All right, very good. So we are rapidly approaching our end time. I'm going to ask one additional question, thus marks by 30 seconds, right? So you'll only have 30 seconds to do a closing remark. So I want to get this question in. And I'm glad we have smart people in the audience, because I am getting intel from audience members that Hinds County is getting a criminal mental health court. The legislature approved it last session, so that's good intel. Along the same lines, though, this question is, what kind of training in mental health awareness do you have? Have you taken any classes? That's a really, really real issue in Hinds County, and oftentimes we overlook that. But the real question on the table, what do you know about mental health? Have you taken any classes? What kind of training? Deborah started the last round, so Bryant will begin with you.
I've attended several seminars as it relates to mental health. Prior to going to law school, I had the privilege of serving as a social worker, received some training in a past life, if you would. I'm only 52, but in a past life before law school, that's what I did. I was a foster care social worker dealing with those issues. We had to have training as it relates to that. So a part of it is listening, which has been real helpful as far as his legal career is concerned, because you got to listen to people. And it really comes to play when I've sat in youth court, where people really just want to be heard sometimes. So it's key.
Trip?
Have taken seminars and continuing education with regard to mental health, but no specific extended classes. But again, I currently serve as special master for commitments, with the specific purpose of determining whether mentally ill people can be served as outpatients or if they should be committed to Whitfield. Additionally, at my time at the youth court, in particular in my role as a parent representative for people with CPS cases, a lot of times that does involve mental health, and people are not serving their children or raising their children because they have their own mental health issues. And so in my time in public service and acting in a judicial capacity, I have seen it and got some on-the-job training in that regard.
Very good. Wendy?
Yes, prior to joining the city of Jackson as its chief city prosecutor, I was a managing attorney advocate for Disability Rights Mississippi. So what I did on a daily basis was work in the mental health field. My clients were Mississippians who live with mental illness. So what I did was address their needs, the very basic needs that many of us may take for granted. So as a part of that, I was talking to them, meeting with their mental health team, trying to arrive at what types of treatment programs, what type of service options, making sure they had access to assistive technology, they had a right to vote, socialize, live free, independent, so receive educational services. So I have worked with mental illness to a great extent for 3 years as a managing attorney / advocate for Mississippians who live with mental illness. And that's how I so readily identify the need for the court system to embrace Mississippians who live with mental illness.
All right, Deborah.
And my exposure has been workshops and seminars as well, and also talking to practitioners who work and who are certified in the mental health issue, and working with counties to have mental health facilities. We're currently working with other states, other cities here in Mississippi to establish a mental health center. So that's been my exposure.
All right, very good. And we have mental health experts in the audience tonight, so they are recording y'all, just FYI. All right, final question tonight. Lots of talk in the community just about judges showing up for work, man. If you are elected to this position, are you going to hold court? Trey?
I think I made mention when you asked the question with regard to qualities that a judge needs to have, and one of those qualities I said was timeliness, because you have to be respectful of other people's time. If you say that court starts at 9:30, then absent an emergency, be ready to go at 9:30. Because most things can be handled in a timely fashion. And that is, again, why I say we need scheduling orders. So if we are mindful of time and showing up on time and showing up to work when you're supposed to, then I think that I'll do a great job.
All right. Wendy?
Thank you. Yes, I have a 21-year history of showing up for work. Wendy has a work ethic. And I've always taken issue with, in my opinion, one person stalling the process. I think it's unfair. I think it's disrespectful, and I think it's inconsiderate for one person to sit in the position of authority and have that kind of control and effect over this many people, and you take it lightly. You have to be respectful, and a part of that is being where you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be there, and doing what you're supposed to do. So as a circuit court judge, I have no issue being there when I'm supposed to and working hard to make sure we address the concerns of the citizens of Jackson and Hinds County.
Very good. Deborah?
And that question leads to commitment and dedication. So you have to be committed and dedicated to do a job. Every job that I have, I've showed up and I've worked overtime and I've given all that I have to make sure that I have been an effective servant leader. So without a doubt, I have no clue. There's no reason for anybody to doubt that I would not be at Hinds County, sitting on the bench, conducting business. I've done it in every job that I have.
All right, very good. Brian?
When I was a young associate at the firm of Davis, Galston, Williams, at the interview, they told me this job is about 50 to 60 hours a week. At that job one night, one of the interns saw my car at the office. Time was 2 o'clock in the morning. My children were young. My daughter's 23 years old now. That was a long time ago. But I was working on an appellate brief. I won. So from there and working for myself these past 17 years, I work whenever I have to. And I know I can't make everybody work over 60 hours or whatever if that's what's required, but I have no problem with working.
All right, very good. Let's give these candidates a round of applause. Great job. Thank you for enduring this forum tonight. Thank you for offering yourselves as public servants. We'll give each of you, timekeeper, 30 seconds for closing remarks. And we're just going to work our way from Deborah back down to the end. So, Deborah, you have 30 seconds to offer closing remarks. 36. Your time starts now.
I'm most qualified to be the circuit court judge. I have experience, I'm dedicated, and I'm willing to do what it takes for you all to be proud of me as your circuit court judge. I've served you well as your state representative, and I will continue to do so. I want you to vote for who you know, someone with integrity, honesty, and hard working who's gonna do what they say they're gonna do when I take the oath of office to serve. I'm gonna know what I need to know and do what I need to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Wendy, 30 seconds.
Thank
Your
you.
time starts now.
You want your judge to have years of practice. It takes years of practice in order to be an effective judge. I've shared with you my 21 years of very relevant and practical work experience. I've been a plaintiff's lawyer, defense lawyer, mental health advocate, and a criminal prosecutor. That's the experience you want your circuit court judge to walk into the courtroom and sit on that bench with. My name is Wendy Wilson White, WWW. I need your vote on November 8th. Wendy Wilson White. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Trent.
I hope that the listening audience has seen tonight that the most experienced person in this race with the most relevant experience, both as a practicing attorney as well as judicial experience, is Trent Walker. Again, I have over 60 jury trials. I've been trying cases since my first non-law clerk job. And I have been a prosecutor. I have defended people. I have tried civil cases, both as a defendant as well as a plaintiff.
Thank
I
you,
have
Trent.
the
That's
experience.
your-
Thank you.
Brian.
For the past 17 years, I have handled both civil and criminal matters of the nature and type that would come before the circuit court. I have the experience, the temperament, and the commitment to serve. Thank you.
All right, let's give all of these candidates another round of applause. Thank you very much. Time now 7:58, and I was charged with getting you out of here at 8 o'clock, and I think I did that. So listen, it is great to have elected officials in the office, particularly those from Hinds County. We have Hinds County Sheriff Terry Jones here. Your job impacts his job, right? We have Hinds County Supervisor David Archie here as well. Let's give him a round of applause. And also City Representative, Ward 4, Councilman Brian Griselle is here as well. So thank you all for being here. Oh, there you go. But you're on the panel. I mean, you're the organizer. But Gerald Mumford is with Hinds County as well. He's an attorney with Hinds County as well. Give him a round of applause. But he's on the organizing committee for this as well. So listen, thank you for your indulgence. Thank you for your commitment to electing good judges in Hinds County. Don't sleep on this race, so please vote in November. Thank you for your indulgence of me. Good night.